Like, what do you do when you first wake up outside of brushing your teeth? And
Traffic.
Putting on a nice jacket and stuff. Traffic.
I don't know. It's not always a nice jacket.
Using their AI and all of the different tools that they have, we're actually able to increase our revenues 3, 4, and 5 times.
We're not only weathering the storm, but we're actually growing right now.
I tend to look at numbers. I look at what's going on, how content is performed, if there's any outages, look at the logs, see what's going on. I have various dashboards that I've built out over time. I was talking about this the other day with the data science team. You know, it's like I'm not a data scientist, but you kind of have to be a little bit. You just do. You cannot do the job I do unless you know SQL, you know a bit of Python. You're able to process data in sheets and move things together. So there's that. There's set pieces that happen every day that we have to like generate certain reports, or I have to contact certain people. And then there's stuff that just comes in sideways, like with any kind of job, I suppose. But there's just a lot more of it.
I can imagine. I'm just trying to get an understanding of like what are the larger technical SEO things that. Can you talk about any big wins that you had?
Yeah, we one of the things that I tried to identify pretty early on is, you know, we had this great corpus of data and information, which was stock quotes, and this is, I mean, you could say it's evergreen, whatever, but it's just information people want to see, you know. So when you Google, you know, you might have invested in stuff, and you know you want to Google Apple. Right. We had that on a subdomain, and it was kind of maintained, but it wasn't at all optimized in any way. Mm-hmm. We had to do something about it. So I managed to get backing in that. We moved that under the main domain,
right?
And we fixed the template. We created its own sitemap. There are hundreds and hundreds, well, more than hundreds, lots of pages underneath there, lots of sub-pages. There's still work to do, but we've done an amazing job. Some of the uplift because of this work we've done, also live coverage will come to in a second, which is what we were going to talk about last year, which is building up to the elections. I mean, just from 2019 to 20, we can talk about an 80% growth in terms of Google referrals.
Specifically with live coverage or just in general?
In general. But all these things fit into that. These are big parts of that, you know, and also articles themselves, the way we publish articles and everything, optimizing articles. Live coverage was a big thing. And if you go 1 year back, we're talking about 133%. So from 2018 to end of 2020, we're about 133% growth.
I'm curious, how much of your daily traffic is like, I know how Google Search Console breaks it down by web search, news, and Discover. Mm-hmm. Is Discover a huge part of your traffic? Or
it's definitely growing. You know, I'm not going to give any numbers out, but I think there was something that was published today with Lily Ray that she sent out that you know, and these are numbers. These are general numbers that are out there as well, and I can see them. And I left a wide range, but you know, in the US it's different to Europe because Europe has a bigger Android user base. But you know, we're talking about 20 to 40% for a news organization. You know, anywhere between there. I'm seeing here, talking to colleagues as well in other publications, whereas you know, it's 40 to 60 in Europe perhaps. So yeah, Discover's growing, and you know, I'm sure it's going to do great things. And Google News is kind of what it is right now, but I think there's great things coming there too. Mm-hmm. But moving the needle, the work we also do with live coverage, with articles, with sitemaps, and I'll come to that in a second, is you know, it was 14. Google referrals in general. That's everything. all the channels was 14% when I joined. That's now averaging 30+%. So you know, we've really moved the needle there. Yeah.
So, so Discover is probably a growing portion of that. And how does live coverage come into play with just in general your referrals? What did you do there?
Well, if you think about it, especially take the election or an Apple event, which could be one day. Yeah. You know, what we did one thing. I spoke to Google and I was really hell bent on something. They have a live blog posting for video and for job postings.
Yes.
And I was just like really hell bent on saying, you got to do this for blogs also. And I seem to remember this either existing years ago or there was something like that years ago.
Hub, Subhub?
Yeah, something. You probably know more than I do, but I just remember something. And so we had a discussion. We got whitelisted, and we used a certain architecture called the indexing API, which allowed us to ping Google in real time every time we posted updated content.
Right.
That's now moved away to basically use the live blog schema. So I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole thing. But just if you're having live coverage on your site, live blog schema is what you need to have. It's online. You do need to get whitelisted, I think, to get some of the access, but it's what you need to do. The benefit of having live coverage, just imagine there's an event going on like an election. If somebody's talking here and then somebody's countering that argument, you're publishing that in real time. You don't want to just depend on the crawler to come or Google to come and fetch that content. And it's probably pretty fast anyway, right?
Right.
But we want it to be ultra fast because it's like 2 minutes later, it's too late.
Right. I mean, for Wall Street Journal, I'm sure it's pretty quick. But I know, like with Bing, you can submit everything now.
I love that. Yeah.
It's just automatic.
That's work in progress. I hope to have that up and running quite soon.
Yeah, they make it pretty easy in
They
general.
also allow you to for any content, I believe.
You could either submit the content directly to them without submitting the actual HTML, or you could just say, here's the URL, get it right away. And it works pretty well. So that's interesting. Is Bing a big part of traffic, or it's not like
it's not as big as we'd hope it to be. And I was listening to the Bing podcast the other day. They were talking about this. Reese was talking about this, and I think it's definitely an opportunity. I should definitely be focusing on it to a point this year, and I think everyone should be who's not just in the news industry.
And I'm curious, how important is like evergreen content compared to obviously breaking stories and news?
It's very important.
It's
extremely important.
That's what the landing pages for Apple and stuff like that are about.
We there's more to come on this, but we've got projects in hand that are going to address. We already have a news archive which we really worked on to fix. There was some technological underlying barriers there that we had to overcome. We have a huge amount of content going back to like 1996.
Right.
So we really had to. We're still in a process there, but we really have to focus on that a lot more. We've done a lot of work to serve it. Some people don't realize if you have older architecture, the way content is served to a bot is different how it's served to a browser. So you could be getting errors when it's served to a bot, and that's actually maybe on your part, and you need to fix that. So,
I hear that. It's I have a small site relative to Wall Street Journal, or relative to anything on the internet. I've been covering search engine news on my blog for years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And the amount of times, let's say I cover the topic of duplicate content, you do a site command for duplicate content, you probably get hundreds of articles that I wrote. Wall Street Journal has probably tons and tons of content on the same topic on multiple URLs.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you consolidate that? Do you make some type of like, all right, this is the category page for everything Trump. This is the category page for everything.
Yeah, so we've got the concept of topic pages. We're streaming it. We used to have that in a certain format, but we're reinventing that a little bit. We've published that right now. We're just it's work in progress actually, and we are going to categorize by topic. We also have the concept of guides. Which is all evergreen. And then duplicate content is very much in hand also. So there's no point in having, if it's very different, I think John talks about this a lot. If it's very different, but it's a similar topic, that might be okay. But if it's like talking about exactly the same thing, but it's, 10 years apart, I think, you need to probably...
So do you index a lot of these pages? Or you're not doing that? I don't know if you can't say anything, it's fine.
I think I don't want to say anything.
For my purpose, I'm always nervous. Like, I have all this old content. One is I'm not going to this old content and updating it. Two is I'm not going to consolidate the content because I don't have time for that. And three is I think the content is a historical piece of content that people want to know about.
So that's my point. Is if this piece of content is older, and it's talking about a point in time when that content was relevant. I think as long as you make that clear. In the corpus and in the schema, etc. If it's almost exact, then yes, you've got duplicate content there. We need to do something about that.
Okay, cool. I kind of want to move on to algorithm updates. I don't know if you want to, before we get into that, talk about anything else. So could you, I'm obviously read my stuff, I guess. You know I'm obsessed with covering algorithm updates.
I know.
It's fun. It reminds me of the old days.
Daily.
Daily. I apologize for all
daily,
this.
but
Anyway, so...
the man works weekends. I don't know. It's like...
So I'm obsessed with it because of the old Google Dance days, which I'm sure you remember back in the old days. And I kind of miss those days. But in any event, now we have these core updates.
Yeah.
Are you able to like talk at all about what the SEO team at Wall Street Journal thinks about when they think about algorithm updates? Do they panic about it? Do they look at, well, it was an update, we got to look at our traffic? Have you been hit by one that you could talk about it? Have you benefited from one that you could talk about?
Yeah, so I mean, I have to be honest with you, we don't panic about it as much. And I've worked in other areas before and had different lives and been a little bit more panicked about it. But we occasionally see we've been hit by things, like every other publisher. We tend to reach out to other publishers, especially within the group, or within the larger News Corps organization. We have a good, we have like an SEO council, like a global council. We all meet monthly from like the UK, Australia.
And not just the Wall Street Journal, the other publications?
No, so we meet with Realtor, we meet with,
John Shatta and stuff?
John, no, because Johnny's not in our group, but
Sorry, John.
That's okay. Love John. He actually, he's almost a neighbour of mine. Like Jeff Preston at Realtor.
Yeah.
So great guy and Pat, that team. Obviously Barron's and Market Watch with Max and Pat there, Ed in our newsroom. Then we've got Alice in the Times in the UK, Jeanette. I'm just listing people off here in News UK, for the Sun.
So you guys, none of you panic. You just
there's some panic sometimes, like if we see it, but we normally stabilize. Where I was recently asked something was about E, and when that. We actually saw an uplift, and I spoke to certain people, and they were like, "Well, you have authority and trustworthiness. It's not really too much of an issue. We are really proud of our journalism, And recently, I'll come back to that thing with the opinion and with the regular news news. We published that newsliteracy.wca.com site to explain the difference between the two and why we have that. New York Times have the same. Yeah.
All right. Can you talk about it? So you did benefit on it because the authority on the Wall Street Journal is probably over the outsane. You've probably never done any link building in the company because you probably need link building, and it's all just. I assume it's mostly technical SEO issues, meaning you have so much content, so many ways to produce the content. So many different writers, getting them to write in a certain way that, Google could crawl that fast and render it nicely and so forth is probably the biggest issue you have. It's not about getting authority. It's not about getting links. It's not about all the other stuff that, even writing content, you have content writers that are the best in the world.
Yeah,
so
we really do.
It's really...
we also have some of the best engineers I've ever worked with, I'll say, in the world. So I tend to work more with engineers, whereas Ed, my colleague, works in the newsroom. And so we have a really good team of strategy editors in the newsroom who are all fully trained on SEO. One of the other things we did was we built a deck very early on when Ed joined to be like a training 101 editorial deck, and that's now, it's gone on to be Ed's done a great job on that. That's now part of the onboarding process. So you get trained in SEO, and there's an SEO. We have Slack channels, we have meets. We have weekly meets and there's daily meets even to talk about it, and it's really active. And then my job is to monitor how we're doing. What's the heartbeat? So my whole thing last year was site health and hygiene, and making SEO a second language. And part of the other thing I'm trying to empower is everyone's an SEO. Like everyone's an SEO. So there's in some part, shape or form. You're doing SEO.
The content writer, the engineer, everybody has their part.
I'm not the only SEO in the company. We are all SEOs,
And you're just monitoring that to make sure everybody's doing their job the best they possibly can. If you're there, if they have any questions about how to do.
Well, the monitoring is we just know when to ask the question, and backwards and forwards. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Setting up a culture of SEO.
I think last year you said something about the importance of data and reporting and setting up these dashboards and stuff like that.
Love it. I'm a complete nerd.
So you have data everywhere. It's constantly flashing on the screen. You not being by your desk right now watching these data
I probably should send you a picture of my monitors.
Could you do that, and I'll include it in the video?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can definitely do that.
You probably have all these cool tools showing different things. So
yeah, we have some cool tools, and I built a tool also internally. I built a tool for. It started off me doing homebrew stuff.
Right.
Being a WordPress guy, built PHP and JavaScript. I do that's when we have an innovation lab. Mm-hmm. They laughed at me, not because of the product, but because of the build. They said this needs to be Node, React, because that's how we do stuff, right? So now that's become a product, and that's actually going to be a global tool. So what it allows you to do is, anyone can put in a URL, and it will give you a page, like a health score, in terms of how it looks in SERPs, how it's probably going to perform based on other data. So that's something cool I'm really involved in. And other dashboards we have is the daily one, there's a weekly report. In fact, that's what I was sending out just before I came to see you. And it gives a whole bunch of information. So we manually harvest, discover news data from Search Console, and we manipulate that data into our dashboard. Mm-hmm. As much as I asked John to put it in the API,
no.
He's now just doesn't answer me anymore. So
I hear you. And we're kind of running, I know you have to leave
Sure.
in the next 10 minutes or so. So are there any top, obviously you do a lot of training and you help your teams do X, Y, and Z. What are the list of things that you say are top of mind when it comes to, let's say, teaching a content writer to learn SEO?
So that's more like what Ed does. I'm
so
more
technical,
about
let's talk engineer side.
Yeah, I tend to do more stuff now if it's talking to people who are not SEOs. What is it? So I talk to the marketing team a lot, and the CMO organization, which I have one foot in, just to explain to them why is it important, how can they play their part, what tools can they use. If we have Yoast on something, then how do you use Yoast? And I might the importance of keywords, title tags. What are they? Mm-hmm.
So they have a fundamental understanding. Once you fundamentally understand how SEO works and what it's about, they can do their job better. I get it. And
also to engineers sometimes too. I don't explain anything to engineers. I fully respect engineers, and it's all about building relationships there. It's all about communication, backwards and forwards. I learn so much from them. I try and just alert them when things go wrong. That's my.
Got it.
I just want to say it's we've gone from almost a one-man SEO team to building out a crew, and SEO is now a second language in Wall Street Journal. It's just what we do. It's in our DNA, and watch out. Moving forwards, we're going to do great stuff.
Cool. All right. I appreciate you spending the time and doing this.
Thank you,
How can people follow you, learn more about you? Just let them know in that camera.
Just Twitter, Richard Naz, LinkedIn, Richard Naz. Keep it really simple. That's where you can find me. Are you guys hiring
at the Wall Street Journal or not right now?
We might be.
All right. Maybe.
Awesome. I'll watch this space.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Barry.